Now, and just a few minutes ago, President John Dramani Mahama has pardoned the acting CEO of Goldbod, Sammy Gyamfi, after accepting his public apology and remorse. This was announced by Felix Kwatiofosu, spokesperson for the president and the minister in charge of government communications, some minutes ago during a press briefing at the presidency.
You will recall that in the immediate aftermath of the emergence of the video, Mr. Sammy Gyamfi promptly issued an apology in which he expressed regret over the matter and took on board public concerns raised overseas. A day after that, the chief of staff summoned him to the presidency to learn about what transpired. The invitation was honored by Mr. Sammy Gyamfi. He indicated to the chief of staff what his side of the story is, what explanation there is for what we all saw in the video. At the time, President Mahama was out of the country, so he had to be briefed on the discussions held with Mr. Sammy Gyamfi by the chief of staff, and he has been briefed. Now, the view is that, to begin with, the presidency acknowledges Mr. Sammy Gyamfi's immediate act of contrition and the acknowledgement of the need to express regrets over that incident. So that apology has been taken on board. You do recall that when President Mahama launched the Code of Conduct, he said that one of the remedies for any potential breach was a public apology. He also said one of the potential remedies was a caution from the highest levels of government. After the interaction with the chief of staff cautioned him, having acknowledged the apology he made, he cautioned him and impressed upon him to take on board public sentiment and act in ways that reflect public expectation. The chief of staff also took the opportunity to reissue the same caution that the president had sent to all appointees to be circumspect in their conduct. There may be things that may be commonplace in our private lives, but once you become a public official, you need to be sensitive to public expectation, and therefore that ought to guide the way that you order your steps. So in view of that, presidency does not believe that any further action ought to be taken beyond the apology and the caution. And we all take a cue from it and are going to do better in order to meet the expectations of the Ghanaian public. We value feedback. We are aware that Ghanaians expect high standards in the performance of our duties as public officials. We remain committed to meeting those high standards to ensure that we deliver the best of governance to our people who have been long suffering in the last few years under poor governance. So that is what I have for you. It is not deemed at this moment necessary to take further action beyond what has already been done. And Mr. Sammy Gyamfi has committed to ensuring that such an incident does not recur. I thank you very much.
That's Felix Kwatiofosu there. He is a minister in charge of government communications, communicating the decision of the government, essentially the presidency, after the meeting between Sammy Gyamfi, the acting CEO of Goldbod, and also the chief of staff earlier in the week, Julius Debrah, indicated that the presidency has resolved that there is no further action needed to be taken after Sammy Gyamfi's public apology immediately after this video went viral. Now, there's been a number of demands from the NPP, for instance, asking that the least that the presidency can do is a suspension of Sammy Gyamfi, an ultimate dismissal. And in fact, so you have some other anti-corruption crusaders also make the point about an investigation into it. Now, we understand that this incident, after the meeting with the chief of staff, some investigation was instituted And this result that has been communicated today, the decision that no further action is needed to be taken. Edem Senanu is the co-chair of the Citizens Movement Against Corruption. Masano, thank you for joining us here on Hot Edition. Now, this is the decision and communication from the presidency. No further action needed to be taken after the public apology and investigation by the presidency, public apology by Sammy Gyamfi. How does this strike you?
Well, I mean, this is what I anticipated. I didn't think there had been any breach of law or policy, except that this was not very circumspect. It was indiscretion to be giving out dollars at such an event. Eventually, some pundits have said it was about $800. I'm sure if the president investigated, it was truly just $800 plus. You could definitely have associated it with some source of legitimate income or revenue. There wasn't much more you could do about it. So I'm not surprised at all. I think that the conclusion is what was anticipated, at least for me. The only thing on my mind is whether they should not be considering updating their code of conduct to have something on matters such as these.
And in updating, what would you expect if they're so minded?
Well, a statement that would talk about not taking any actions that bring the government to disrepute, something to deal with any ostentatious lifestyles that make the public think that public officers are taking advantage of their offices. Something to that extent, just to make sure that modesty is the order of the day for public officers.
I see. And those who have also raised on the bit about what has to be done going forward. There are those who, for instance, the MPP had called for his suspension at the least. Is it a far-fetched demand, or one that in your view could have been considered?
Actually, I mean, on one part, I said this was quite ludicrous. I mean, I don't see how they arrived at that conclusion. I mean, they seem to be suggesting that he was engaged in a business, foreign exchange business, and I was wondering whether a business is not about profit, and why he would be making a loss by giving all the foreign exchange for nothing to Agrada. I thought that the whole thinking around it was flawed, and I wasn't quite sure whether I was going to bring anything substantive. I don't think that expectation was likely to have met. There's no way you could describe this incident as Mr. Gyamfi engaging in a business transaction or dealing in foreign exchange, and the laws we're quoting were just not aligned with the facts of the case.
Now, how would this particular decision by the presidency, that because Sammy Gyamfi has apologized, and as a matter of fact, they have also after instituting investigation, they resolved that indeed this is an act of indiscretion, and so he has been cautioned. How would this cure the optics of that particular incident, and how it also offends the sensibilities of Ghanaians?
I don't think that it will cure the optics. I mean, it will forever be remembered as Mr. Sammy Gyamfi having failed to be circumspect enough to realize the dangers and the risk in doing something like that. If he had been giving, say, CDs, that already would have changed the narrative. And obviously, if it wasn't something that amounted to much, then there's nothing to write about. So I don't think it will cure the optics of people say, how could Sammy Gyamfi do something like this? That's not going to be cured. It's a lesson learned the hard way for him. And certainly it's going to be something that serves as a red flag for all other political appointees. They'll be more cautious about these kinds of actions. Your second part was... What was the second question?
The second question about how, essentially, was about how this was going to impact on the optics. But you say it's not going to change much of it. But then again, there's also that call about the lack of specificity in the act of violation and the attendant act of reprimand. So if you look at page 63 of this code of conduct that was launched just about a week ago, it indicates that if a minister or a CEO in conduct that prima facie constitute a breach of any rule in this handbook, the president shall determine at his or her discretion the course of action that should be taken. So that course of action is at the discretion of the president. That's one. And such actions may include, but are not limited to, requiring the minister or CEO to render a public apology. So in this instance, Sammy Gyamfi going out to do that public apology from the discretion as exercised by the president, he's ticked this box. Does that suffice?
Well, I mean, the point I keep making is that there's no clause of that code of conduct that was breached in the first instance. So you can look through it. I didn't find anything that you could say Mr. Gyamfi has breached. Not by a far stretch, not even in the Constitution or by any existing law. So that's what I'm saying. If they don't update it, really there was nothing to write home about, except the fact that you had a public officer at a senior level who was giving out dollars. That's not the currency we use. So that raises eyebrows. And then the amount, well, somebody can begin to ask, is this his own money or not? And it is that potential linkage, because he's no longer a private person in his own capacity. He's now a public officer, and everything he does is now open to public scrutiny. And that's legitimately so. So he ought to be much more circumspect, measured, and modest in what he does, and that's where he failed. So I don't see that he has breached anything that was even, could have been picked out of that rule book or code of conduct to talk about, except that, yes, many people were not happy about it, and he gave an apology, which was a right and wise thing to do. The president has looked at that. I mean, the one thing that needed to be established was, what was the source of this money? As for the event itself, clearly you saw Agrada snatching money from him. You saw him counting just some of it. So you could tell from the set of events that it wasn't like it was just, it was a transaction where it was a fixed amount he was giving. So the real issue was, is this money from a legitimate source or not? And I think that that's the investigation they must have done and concluded, well, this is nothing to belabor and stretch. And definitely they must have found that this is something that he must have earned legitimately. So really, there's nothing to report, except that, yes, we don't want our public officers going around giving dollars, especially when it's in large sums. We don't want that kind of thing where then you are wondering, is it somebody who is going to bribe? What is going on here? And that's why I said maybe some additional thinking to capture that in their code of conduct may be helpful. But beyond that, what we actually need as a country is the Conduct of Public Officers Bill to be dusted, finalized, and passed. That then will be a law that everybody, and I think that's where your question on the discretion of the president becomes material.
Absolutely.
At the moment, unless somebody goes to the president that assumes he has done something, and the president has now spent time thinking through with perhaps some small group what action to take, that's not probably the most effective. The best way is to have a law with sanctions already codified in it, such that then if somebody does something, 35 million Ghanaians can decide to go to court, and it's clear what sanctions should be applied. I think that is the way to go.
I appreciate your thoughts. While at it, let me also acknowledge Martin Kpebu is private legal practitioner. Counsel, appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us. So this is the outcome of the presidency's investigation and then also the communication. No further action to be taken in terms of disciplinary action against Sammy Gyamfi. He has apologized, no code broken, but in the words of Edem Senanu, after this event, he and other public office holders must be cautious in doing this in public. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so it's good the president has pardoned Sammy Gyamfi, okay? It's good he's done so. And because it's politics, some people were funding this thing just to score political points. It's shame on them. We shouldn't do that. We are a society. People should be objective. I told you that this is a breach of Sammy Gyamfi's Article 18 rights, his right to privacy. How do you film a man who is counting money in a car? Why? If he wanted to do a public display, would he have been counting the money in the car? He would have come outside the car. So that paparazzi who did that, if we get him, we should be thinking of, Sammy should be thinking of suing him for invading his privacy and all this hell he's caused. So the president has done the right thing. He's done the right thing. And those who were, I can't help emphasizing the point that those who just wanted to do political equalization, it is shame on them. This is no money. Look, listen, sometimes we have to be very clear and we have to be very honest. Otherwise, we will box ourselves into a situation we cannot get out of. That money Sammy counted, does it look like money beyond his income? When we talk of money laundering, etc., it says that when we find you with money, that looks like money beyond your income. That's one of the measures. It looks like money beyond your income. Then we begin to think about crime. You know how many people are holding dollars? Millions of Ghanaians are holding dollars. Yes, if we want to, if we want to deprecate the conduct of Ghanaians holding dollars, yes, let's be clear. But this one, that was not what they were basically looking at. People were just interested in saying, this is corruption, this is our money, this is Cecilia Gate. That's referring to the Cecilia Dapa matter. That's where they lost it. If they had been clear that we deprecate this conduct, we don't want Ghanaians holding money, US dollars, etc. Yes, they would have had a better reception and a better debate, because we know that certain points Ghanaians hold dollars when they shouldn't be, okay, because the Ghana cedi is our currency, etc. But, we are also rational human beings. When the cedi was falling so much, we have no option but to look for dollars so that we don't lose our life savings, etc. So even that particular matter, it's not a straightforward matter. Those shouting, giddy, 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 you know how much millions of dollars a lot of those people hold? But they will say, well, they have not been caught, right? But that's hypocrisy. The fact that you've not been caught doesn't mean that you should go and start condemning somebody over things that are not a crime, right? So the president, I like the president's disencourage that he's been able to totally pardon Sammy Gyamfi. It's even a pardon, because he's saying that no wrong has been done. So actually, the use of the word pardon is even a malaprop. Pardon is when somebody has broken a law or done something wrong and you decide not to sanction him, right? But if we agree that he's not breaking any law, then we shouldn't be saying pardon. But I also understand that, well, if you say pardon, it communicates something, right? So that's the right thing. But moving forward, I thought that while we were talking about Sammy Gyamfi soon, they will be more concerned about the millions of dollars that we saw with Cecilia Dapa, and which they couldn't even, the MPP couldn't bring Cecilia Dapa to justice. Cecilia Dapa, who was given 3 opportunities to explain the source of the income, that money, and she couldn't explain. She said it was cosmetic business. The 2 cosmetic companies she gave details to the OSP to go check. It turned out those companies didn't belong to her, etc. And then she said the money also belonged to her, the dollars belonged to her deceased brother, who was a cobbler, right? Then later she changed it because the deceased brother's widow wanted to sue her, etc. You are not concerned about that, but you are just concerned about a few, hundreds or thousands of different dollars. That money that Sammy Gyamfi counted could not have been more than $3,000.
No, but Counsel, how about that proposal that, and I referenced it earlier, what you heard Edem Senanu talk about, that the takeaway should be some guiding principles, at least, for public officers in how they conduct themselves in the public in this regard, and not necessarily, for instance, going by the other proposals that there should be a law regulating gift giving by public office holders.
Yes, he's right, because you cannot put a limit on what somebody can give as a gift. That's preposterous. Yes, I heard that thing. Some people were saying there should be a limit. How? When an MP is paying this constituent school fees, 50,000, 100,000, you want to limit that? If an MP is paying a constituent's medical bills, you want to limit that? As I said, you see, some people rushed into this particular debate. Sometimes I look back, the more the debate developed, then the more some of the comments some big people gave initially looked a bit not appropriate, because that put a limit on what a politician can give. Which law is that? Where? What the laws that we currently have is what we should strengthen. Just be sure that what he's giving is his money. That's why you should be looking at asset declaration law, better law on that. We know his income, we know what he has declared, so that assuming you find an MP giving a constituent 200,000, and yet you see that when he declared his assets maybe 3 months ago, all of his cash was, let's say, worth maybe 200,000. They are like, but this MP, your declaration is just a few months, 3 or 4 months ago. You didn't have much cash. How can you give a constituent 100,000, etc.? You see, so you tackle it from I believe, the asset declaration law, strong laws on the asset declaration. Yeah. But you can never dictate to another human being how much he can give as a person because he's a public officer. That's not possible. So if a constituent is sick, the medical bill is 200,000. The MP wants to pay all the 200,000. Who are we to say that this MP shouldn't pay that money, or this minister shouldn't save another Ghanaian?
But all of this also, you heard Phyllis Kwachofosu when he was addressing the press at the Jubilee House not too long ago, that this debate also reflects the high standards Ghanaians expect, and not that this is going to be business as usual governance. And that's one point that you made earlier, that to the extent that this became a big issue and the demands that Ghanaians were making clearly indicates that we're not going to tolerate this as business as usual, is it not?
Yes, absolutely. So this debate tells you that a lot of Ghanaians are engaged now in our governance system. So they are very concerned. Anything they would raise questions. Yes, so it's good. It's good. But let's also mention that, Kwasi Fosu is a politician. He doesn't want to lose votes. So he cannot be as vociferous and plain talking or straight talking like me. I am not looking for votes, so I have to address it head on like a regular Ghanaian. I don't want us to do some analysis that tomorrow will give us trouble. What I'm saying is, Ocansey, is that if an MP or a minister is going to pay a constituent medical bills, it's worth so much. You are saying what? Because it's an MP, he shouldn't give that money. Oh, your remedy is that get an asset declaration law that gives you an insight into how much he owns, so that when he's giving the money, then you can measure whether it is proportionate to his income or not. That's why I said, so we are tackling it from the wrong perspective. And so, Kwasi Fosu being a politician, he knows the next election is practically, let's say, 3 years away. So he has to be careful in speech. He won't argue with you. Yes, but to be very honest, I will speak plainly. A lot of the arguments we are hearing in this debate were not arguments we should be making. They were more about a certain political agenda just to paint this government black. But he, Kwasi Fosu, cannot make such statements because quickly opposition will take him on. But we are not being fair to ourselves. The opposition who are trying to drive this one as an agenda should bow their heads in shame. They were here. They paid bills. They could not even stop. Even in opposition, they pay a lot of bills, etc. So they shouldn't take this matter out of context. Otherwise, it will come to hurt them. Look, Mr. Ocansey, I'm promising you, it won't be long. Somebody will bring a video of these opposition people doling out plenty money. It won't be long. Just mark it on the wall. Then you see more of the hypocrisy. Tackle asset declaration law. We should know what each of these public officers is worth. So when he's giving out money, you can measure. That is it. If you don't tackle to know what he's worth, how can you just see money and presume this is our funds, this is corruption, etc.? So we showed that on the asset declaration law, even Liberia, war-torn Liberia, they publish their assets publicly. when the public officers declare, it's publicly available. I'm talking about African countries.
Yes.
Central African Republic, another war-torn country. They also publish. Cape Verde, South Africa, and then is in Mozambique. 5 countries. Some of these countries, we are well ahead of them. South Africa was under apartheid. We have been free ever since, from 1957. Why should we let all these countries go ahead of us? We had our own law there, PNGC Law 280. It was there, and then in 1993, we repealed it when we passed Act 550. That's the current public officers disqualification, blah, 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 law, Act 550. So the point is that go back, Sankofa, let's do Sankofa. Let's get a better asset declaration law so that we can use it to tackle some of these things, rather than to say public officers should not give money. It's not possible. You can't write any law like that.
And Council, on that particular tangent, maybe a quick one on this. There's been that aspect of this conversation as well about the recipient, so that if really Sammy Gyamfi had given the same amount of money to, for instance, a needy, but brilliant student, or somebody who needs very urgent medical care, or he was doing a donation with the same amount, it wouldn't have become an issue. But is a recipient also to be looked at in all of this?
Yes. That's one of the things that fueled it, because the recipient for the food soldiers, one of the things is that this recipient, Patricia Oduro-Kwatin, right?
Yes.
Popularly called Agrada, she had preached relentlessly against John Mahama, candidate Mahama, even though Patricia Oduro-Kwatin's father was NDC. Yes, I've seen one of the sermons where she was saying that Mimoja NDC, Nanso, blah, blah, JM can never become president. All those things mixed came up, right? But I'm looking at the principle. I don't want to look at the peripheral facts. So if it means that if it's Agrada, then that one we will make a different rule. If it is Kuhia, then that one another rule. We can't live in such a society. It's one rule. Generally, of course, there are exceptions. Sometimes in the law, there's affirmative action. But that apart, they'll tell you that equality before the law.
Yes.
Or in another sense, you hear generally equality before the law. But also to every rule, there are exceptions. But that's not the exception people want in this case. But let's not forget that Agrada, that's Patricia Oduro-Kwatin, says that she gave out her hotel to NDC to use during the campaign period for free. And we all know that sometimes you give something for free, but later on, when you get an opportunity, you wish you are giving something in appreciation. So let's say you're giving somebody something worth 100,000. Another time, you see the person, maybe he has prospered. He said, hey, you remember I did this for you. Okay, you to give me something in appreciation. So please, for those saying that, why is Sammy Gyamfi giving Agrada money when they food soldiers are hungry, etc.? Agrada is saying that they use her hotel during the campaign period. She mentioned the number of days, I've forgotten. But you see a sermon. So is there a hotel? Does she own a hotel there? What NDC uses? NDC uses, that is it.
Okay.
Yeah, so in all, yes, the main lesson we'll learn is that because Sammy Gyamfi destroyed the NPP, okay, because he gave them a lot of hell, he exposed a lot of the Baumia and Akufo-Addo's sloganeering and bad governance, he is a big target to the NPP. So the least thing he does, they want to, paint him black. So it's a lesson to all of us. Yes, right. That's why I see.
I see. Council, and stay with me a bit. Just some 25 minutes to the top of the hour, 6 p.m.